Grimora.
The mirror arrived on a Wednesday, one of those pale, gray mornings where the air feels still before a storm. It came in the back of an old delivery truck, covered in a dusty white sheet that smelled faintly of cedar and mildew. The wooden frame was carved from dark ashwood, intricate but aged, with faint symbols etched into its corners, tiny spiral patterns that seemed too deliberate to just be decoration. Claire McAllister didn't believe in curses. She didn't even believe in luck. She owned a small antique shop in Dalton, Georgia, McAllister and Sons Antiques, though she had neither sons nor much patience for nostalgia. She'd taken over the shop from her late father, who'd passed away 2 years earlier. Since then, the shop had grown quieter, dustier, and lonelier, filled with things people once loved, but no longer wanted. When she pulled the sheet off the mirror, a cloud of dust rose into the light. For a second, she saw her reflection, faded, hollow-eyed, hair falling loose from its tie. Then the light shifted, and something inside the glass seemed to move, just a flicker, like a shadow passing behind her reflection. Claire frowned and turned, but the shop was empty. She told herself she was tired. Too many nights spent sorting old ledgers, too many mornings opening a store nobody really visited anymore. The mirror was beautiful, though, the kind of piece that could anchor the whole front display. It was almost 7 feet tall, framed in heavy ashwood, with the faint scent of smoke baked into the grain. The surface had that aged silvering around the edges that collectors loved, just enough imperfection to feel authentic. She placed it in the corner near the front window, facing the door, so it caught the light. For the first time in months, her shop felt different, livelier, like it was watching her. That night, after locking up, she lingered by the mirror again. Outside, the rain had started, soft, persistent, drumming lightly on the glass storefront. The mirror's surface shimmered faintly in the dim light, catching every flash of lightning as if it had its own pulse. When she leaned closer, her reflection seemed too still. Her own face stared back, same tired eyes, same faint lines around her mouth, but the background behind her reflection didn't match the store. There were curtains where there should have been shelves. And in the far corner, where her reflection's shoulder should have met the edge of the frame, there was a door. But there was no door behind her. Claire blinked, leaned closer, and for one impossible second, she saw someone standing behind that door in the reflection. A woman, barefoot, dressed in white, her hair hanging in damp strands over her face. Lightning flashed, and she was gone. Claire jerked back, her heart hammering. She turned. Nothing, just the quiet creak of the old floorboards, the hum of the fluorescent light above her. Jesus, she whispered, rubbing her arms. The mirror just glass. That's all. Old glass warps images. Her father had told her that 100 times. Ghosts don't live in antiques, Claire, only memories. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that the thing wanted to be looked at. She turned off the lights, grabbed her keys, and went home. But she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that figure again, pale, unmoving, standing behind the door that didn't exist. The next morning, she arrived early. The rain hadn't stopped. It was heavier now, flooding the gutters and streaking the shop windows in sheets. When she unlocked the front door, the bell above it gave a hollow little chime. The air inside was cool and still. Everything was where she'd left it, except the mirror. It wasn't facing the door anymore. It was turned toward the back of the shop. She froze in the doorway. She hadn't moved it. She was sure of it. She stepped forward, her shoes squeaking on the wet floor. The mirror's surface rippled faintly, just a shimmer of light, and she saw her reflection again. But this time, it smiled. She wasn't smiling. Her breath caught. She stepped closer, eyes locked on the glass. Her reflection's lips moved slowly, forming words she couldn't hear. She whispered, "What are you saying?" The reflection stopped smiling, and then, from deep within the glass, something tapped. Once, twice, like knuckles on wood. She stumbled back, knocking over a chair. The tapping stopped. Then came a voice. Soft, familiar, Claire. It was her father's voice. She froze. Dead? Silence. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She stepped closer again. The mirror was still now, still and empty, just her own trembling reflection staring back. The bell above the door rang suddenly. Claire jumped, turning sharply. It was a woman, drenched from the rain, mid-40s, wearing a gray coat that looked 2 sizes too big. Her eyes darted around the shop like she was looking for something specific. "Can I help you?" Claire asked, trying to steady her voice. The woman's gaze landed on the mirror. Her face went white. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. Claire frowned. "It came from an estate sale up near Savannah." The woman's voice cracked. "You need to get it out of here. Now." "What? Why?" The woman backed away, shaking her head. "That mirror isn't yours. It was hers." "Whose?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "My sister's." Claire swallowed hard. "Your sister's?" "She died in front of it, and the last thing she said was—" She stopped, her breath catching, eyes darting toward the mirror. Inside the glass, something moved again, just a flicker, like a shadow turning. The woman whispered, "Don't look at it when it rains." Then she turned and ran out into the storm. The bell above the door went silent again. Claire stood frozen for a long time, staring at the empty space where the woman had been. The rain beat harder against the glass. She turned slowly toward the mirror. Her reflection was gone. Only darkness filled the frame now, and deep within that darkness, something breathed. That night, the rain refused to stop. It hammered against Claire's apartment windows like an endless drumbeat, steady and relentless, as if trying to remind her that something had followed her home. She sat on the couch in the dark, a half-empty mug of tea cooling beside her. Every time the thunder rolled, she flinched. The air felt thick, charged, the same kind of heaviness she'd felt in the shop when she heard her father's voice. The woman's words echoed in her head. "Don't look at it when it rains." She told herself it was ridiculous. Mirrors didn't move on their own. They didn't hold voices. They didn't breathe. But when she closed her eyes, she could see it. The Ashwood frame, the faint spiral carvings, the shimmer in the glass, and that dark space where her reflection should have been. The next morning, she found herself back at the shop before dawn. She hadn't planned to go. She didn't remember getting in the car or driving there. But as she stood in front of the store, keys in hand, the rain still falling in soft silver lines, it felt like she'd been pulled there. The bell above the door gave a dull chime as she stepped inside. It was quiet, too quiet. No hum of the lights, no sound from the street, just the rhythmic tick of the clock on the wall. Her eyes went immediately to the mirror. It was facing the front door again, and this time there was something in front of it. A small white envelope resting on the floor, right where her reflection's feet would be. She hesitated before picking it up. The paper was damp, the ink on the front slightly smudged. There was no stamp, no address, only her name written in neat, old-fashioned handwriting. Claire. She tore it open. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded once. The reflection remembers what you've forgotten. No signature, no clue where it had come from. Claire's pulse quickened. She looked up, back at the mirror. Her reflection stared back, pale, tired, her eyes ringed with shadows. But then her reflection blinked. She hadn't blinked. Claire froze. The reflection's mouth moved slightly, forming silent words. She leaned closer, trying to read its lips. The reflection smiled, and then, in a whisper so faint it could have been imagined, she heard, "Look closer." Her breath fogged the glass. Inside the misted surface, a shape began to form, faint, like the impression of another room behind her reflection. The light was dim, flickering, and she could just make out the outline of a woman standing in front of the same mirror, holding a child. Claire's heart stopped. The woman's face was turned slightly away, but she looked familiar. The curve of her jaw, the way her hair fell against her shoulders. The child was crying. The woman's lips moved as she tried to soothe it. Then slowly she turned toward Claire, and the woman's face was hers. Older, gaunter, eyes hollow, skin pale, but unmistakably her. The reflection's background changed again, the woman and child gone, replaced by the dark room she'd seen before, the one with the door that didn't exist. And from behind that door came a sound, knocking, 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Claire stumbled back, clutching her chest. No, this isn't real. The mirror's surface rippled again, just once, like a drop of water had fallen into it. She backed away until she hit the wall. Her breath came fast, shallow. Then, behind her, the clock on the wall stopped ticking. The silence that followed was so deep it made her ears ring. And then she heard something else, faint, coming from the mirror, a recording, her father's voice. "You're not supposed to have it, Claire." She turned slowly. "What?" The voice was distorted, low, echoing as though underwater. "You're not supposed to have it." The sound cut off with a crackle. The mirror flashed white just for a second, and then her reflection was gone again. She didn't move for a long time. The rain outside softened into a drizzle, and the sound of passing cars slowly returned. It was morning now. People would start coming into town. She needed air.
She stepped outside and pulled the door behind her, the bell giving its hollow chime. She didn't notice the thing that moved in the mirror as she left, the faint outline of a hand pressed flat against the inside of the glass, leaving a pale print that slowly began to drip. That night, she dreamed of her father. He stood in her childhood home, beside the fireplace, his face in shadow. In his hands, he held the mirror, younger now, clean, shining. He said her name, softly, Claire. She reached out to touch the frame, but her father's eyes turned black, bottomless, reflective, and when he spoke again, his voice was not his own. It's not showing you the past. It's showing you what it wants to happen. She woke up, gasping, her hands shaking, the sound of rain still echoing faintly in her ears. That morning, she arrived at the shop just after sunrise. For the first time, the mirror looked different. Its surface was cracked, a single thin fracture running diagonally from corner to corner, like a wound, and beneath the crack, something shimmered. Not her reflection, not darkness. A room lit by candlelight, and in the center, a woman kneeling before the mirror, whispering something she couldn't hear. Claire leaned closer, pressing her palm against the glass. The woman stopped whispering and looked up. Her eyes were wet and shining, and her lips moved, forming a single word: run.
For the next 3 days, Claire stopped opening the shop altogether. She couldn't bring herself to unlock that door again, couldn't stand the thought of standing in front of that mirror. Every time she tried to sleep, she saw that cracked reflection, the woman kneeling, whispering, "Run." But she didn't run, because a part of her didn't believe it was real, and another part of her, the one that had inherited her father's obsession with the unknown, needed to understand why. On the 4th day, when the rain returned, she found herself back at the shop. The air inside felt heavier, colder, as though the building itself had been holding its breath while she was gone. The smell of dust and old wood filled her lungs. The mirror hadn't moved this time. It sat exactly where she left it, but someone had written across its cracked surface, faint words traced in condensation. "Do you remember the fire?" Claire blinked. What fire? As if in response, a sound began echoing softly from within the glass, distant crackling, the faint roar of flames, and then, faintly, screaming. She stepped closer, heart hammering. The glass began to shimmer, light blooming within it until it filled her vision entirely. For a moment, she wasn't standing in her shop anymore. She was standing in her childhood bedroom. The wallpaper, pink, faded, the rocking chair by the window, the sound of rain against the roof, and downstairs, the crackle of the fire. Her father's voice shouting, her mother's voice crying. Claire stumbled back, pressing a hand to her head. No, this isn't real. But it felt real. The heat against her face, the smell of smoke, the sound of breaking glass. Then she saw herself, a small girl, maybe 7 years old, standing in the doorway, clutching a doll. Her father grabbed her, shouting for her to run, but when she turned toward the front door, the mirror was there. Even then, the same ashwood frame, the same spiral carvings. She saw her father shove her toward it, not to protect her, but to hide her inside it. The glass rippled as he pushed her small body forward, and in that moment, just before the flames consumed everything, Claire saw her own face reflected in the mirror, screaming silently from the other side. Then everything went white. She fell backward, gasping, the shop spinning around her. The vision vanished, leaving only the mirror in front of her, cracked and still. Her reflection stared back, wide-eyed, shaking. She touched the glass with trembling fingers. It was cold to the touch, but deep beneath that chill, she could feel something pulsing, faintly, like a heartbeat. "No," she whispered, "you're lying." The reflection smiled again, and this time it whispered back, "You forgot me." Claire stumbled away, knocking over a stack of books. The shop echoed with the sound of collapsing wood and shattering glass. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She fumbled it out with shaking hands. It was a message from an unknown number. Unknown. "You shouldn't have looked during the rain." She froze, staring at the screen. Before she could respond, another message appeared. Unknown. "It knows your name now." That night, she sat at her kitchen table with every light in the apartment turned on. The rain had followed her home again, steady and relentless. She'd unplugged every reflective surface, even covered the bathroom mirror with a towel. But the apartment didn't feel like hers anymore. The pictures on the walls, the ones of her and her parents, looked different. Her father's face was slightly wrong in one of them, his expression colder, eyes darker. And in another picture, one from her childhood, her reflection was missing entirely, just a faint smudge of light where she should have been standing. Around midnight, she heard it, a soft tap, then another. It was coming from the covered mirror in the bathroom. Her heart pounded. She grabbed the towel and yanked it off. The mirror was fogged over. Slowly, a handprint appeared from the inside, then another, and in the condensation, words began to form. "You were supposed to stay." The light above the sink flickered once. When it steadied again, Claire's reflection was gone, but there was someone else standing behind her, a woman, pale, hair dripping, eyes black as the glass itself. The woman smiled and whispered, "You left me in the fire." The lights went out. Claire screamed, stumbling backward, tripping into the bathtub. She crawled at the curtain, her heart racing. The bathroom was dark now, pitch black except for the faint shimmer of moonlight from the window. When she looked up, the mirror wasn't reflecting her. It was showing the antique shop. She could see the front counter, the shelves, the cracked mirror, and standing in front of it was hers, only not her. The reflection smiled and waved. Then, still smiling, it stepped out of the frame and into the room beyond it.
Claire gasped. She crawled out of the tub and ran for the living room. Her phone was buzzing again. Dozens of messages, all from that same unknown number. Every message said the same thing. Look outside. Her stomach twisted. She turned slowly toward the window. Rain streamed down the glass in heavy lines, and through it, faint, distorted by the storm, she saw someone standing on the street below, a woman in white, staring up at her window. Lightning flashed. For just a split second, she saw her own face looking back at her from that figure below. Then the lights went out again.
By morning, the rain had stopped. The streets of Dalton glistened with puddles and broken branches, the kind of aftermath that feels calm but isn't, like the world is holding its breath. Claire hadn't slept. She'd spent the entire night sitting in her living room, lights on, every mirror covered, every shadow watched. But as the sun crept through the blinds, she realized something strange. Her phone, her photos, were all wrong. Every picture she appeared in looked different. In some, her face was blurred. In others, it wasn't her at all. It was someone else. Someone who looked like her, but not quite. The eyes were darker, the expression empty. She opened her messages. The unknown number had stopped texting, but the last message still glowed on the screen. "You're almost gone." She drove to the shop, desperate for answers. The moment she unlocked the door, a gust of cold air hit her, sharp and metallic, like air from a basement that hadn't been opened in decades. The mirror was waiting, standing in the same corner, and this time there was someone else in it, not her reflection. A woman, standing in the exact spot where she stood. Same clothes, same hair, same face. Only the eyes were different. Black, bottomless, calm. "Who are you?" Claire whispered. The reflection tilted its head, smiling faintly. Then, with slow precision, it raised its hand, and from the other side of the glass, touched the inside of the mirror where her own palm would be. Claire hesitated, then reached out. Her fingertips brushed the glass. It was cold, but not solid. The surface rippled under her touch, like water disturbed by a breath. Her phone buzzed again. She looked down. A new message. Unknown. If you touch her again, you'll trade places. Claire jerked her hand back, her breath catching in her throat. When she looked up, the reflection was gone, but something else was in the glass now. Her shop, her body, standing motionless behind the counter, eyes closed, lips moving silently as though whispering a prayer. Claire ran. She bolted out the front door, the bell above it shrieking like an alarm. Outside, the street was empty. The rain had started again, faint, drizzling, tapping softly against her coat. Her reflection looked up at her from every puddle, not as a reflection, as a person, smiling. Then, as she blinked, they all vanished. She didn't go home. She drove to the next town over, Ellsworth, a quiet little place with a diner that hadn't changed since the 1950s. She sat at the counter, nursing a coffee she didn't drink, trying to feel normal. "Rough morning?" the waitress asked, sliding over a napkin. Claire forced a smile. "Something like that." The waitress laughed softly. "You look familiar. You from around here?" "Dalton," Claire said automatically. The waitress' smile faltered. "Dalton?" "Yeah. Why?" The woman hesitated, then said quietly, "Dalton burned down in '83, honey." Claire blinked. "What?" "Old textile fire. Whole Main Street went up. Not a soul left." Claire felt the blood drain from her face. The waitress tilted her head. "Are you okay?" But Claire wasn't listening anymore, because in the reflection of the chrome napkin holder in front of her, she wasn't sitting alone.
There was someone behind her, a woman in white, hair dripping, eyes black, and she was smiling. Claire stood up so fast her chair toppled over. "I have to go!" The waitress frowned. "Hey, you haven't—" But Claire was already out the door, stumbling into the rain, the world spinning. Dalton burned down in '83. Her father, her mother, her house, the fire, the mirror, her entire life a reflection built from something that wasn't real. By the time she reached the antique shop again, night had fallen. The sign above the door no longer said McAllister and Sons Antiques. It said Ashwood Antiques, the same name that had been carved faintly on the mirror's back. The lights inside flickered as she stepped in. The mirror stood in the center of the room now, as though it had moved itself there. Her reflection smiled at her again, no longer a ghostly image. It looked alive, and it wasn't on the other side anymore. It was stepping out. The surface of the glass stretched and split like water disturbed by wind. The figure emerged, dripping, glistening, the air around it hissing softly. Claire backed away, her hands trembling. "Stay back!" she whispered. The thing looked at her, identical in every way, and whispered, "You were never supposed to leave." The lights above them flickered violently. Every antique in the shop rattled. Claire turned, reaching for the door, but it wouldn't open. Behind her, the other Claire's voice turned colder. "You lived my life, now it's mine again." The mirror behind her began to hum, a low, deep vibration that crawled through the floorboards. Shadows leaked from its cracks, spreading across the wood like ink. Claire turned just in time to see the other Claire smile again and vanish back into the glass, pulling the world with her. The hum stopped. The shop was quiet again, but the mirror's reflection had changed. Now it showed a version of the shop that didn't exist, clean, bright, full of customers. And behind the counter stood Claire, smiling, alive, as though nothing had ever happened. Outside, the rain began again, and in the glass, just faintly, a single hand pressed from the inside, leaving a bloody print that began to fade.
Morning light crept through the shop windows, soft and gold, touching every antique with gentle warmth. It would have looked beautiful if it had been real. The Claire who stood behind the counter smiled at the sunlight, her hands folded neatly before her. She looked perfect. Her hair was clean, her clothes pressed, her eyes calm. To anyone walking past the glass storefront, she was just another shopkeeper beginning her day. But behind that calm, in the faint shimmer of every reflective surface, the real Claire was screaming. Inside the mirror, time didn't behave like it should. The air was heavy, slow. Dust hung in the light like static. Every sound echoed too long. Claire could see her doppelganger through the glass, moving, smiling, laughing silently at customers who weren't really there. The shop inside the mirror was alive, full of motion and warmth, while hers was colorless and still. She pressed her palms against the cold surface. "Let me out!" The reflection turned, as though hearing her, and smiled faintly. "You were never out!" Then it turned back to its counterfeit customers and kept living her stolen life. Claire backed away, her breath fogging the inside of the mirror. The world behind her was a warped version of her shop. Shelves twisted, objects stretched, every corner darker than it should be. She shouted, but her voice didn't echo. Something moved behind her, slow, dragging footsteps. She turned sharply. It was her father. At least, he looked like him. Same flannel shirt, same gentle smile, but his eyes were empty. Black pits reflecting the flicker of candlelight. "Dad?" He smiled wider.
You look just like your mother." Claire stepped back, trembling. "What is this place?" He tilted his head, eyes glinting like glass. "A place for what's forgotten. I'm not supposed to be here." He nodded. "You were left here once before. You don't remember." Claire shook her head. "That's not true." He looked toward the mirror, the other side, the one where her double now laughed at something unseen. "It's taking your place again. It's better at being you." She ran toward the mirror, pounding her fists on it. "You can't have my life!" The reflection turned and looked at her through the glass. Its smile faltered for the first time. "You already gave it to me," Claire screamed. The mirror rippled beneath her hands. The air behind her father's shape wavered, and his voice turned sharp, inhuman. "She remembers now. That means the mirror must feed again." He lunged. Claire stumbled back, grabbed a rusted lantern from a nearby shelf, and swung it. It passed through him like smoke, but the flame flickered brighter, sparking against the glass. A crack split across the mirror, her reflection's perfect face distorted, eyes widening in shock. "Stop!" it cried, the voice echoing in both worlds. "You'll kill us both!" Claire hit the mirror again and again, until the crack spread like lightning, webbing through the Ashwood frame. Light burst through the fracture, white and blinding, pulling everything toward it. Air, sound, dust. Her. When Claire woke, she was lying on the floor of the real shop. The mirror stood before her, whole again. No cracks, no shimmer, just her reflection, quiet, trembling, human. She staggered up, tears spilling down her cheeks. For a moment, it felt like it was over, like she'd escaped. But when she turned toward the front window, the town outside was wrong. The buildings were the same, but not. The colors muted, the people walking too slowly, their faces blurred, and every shop window reflected not them, but her. Every reflection in every surface in that street, her face, watching herself from hundreds of angles. She ran outside. "Hey, somebody help me!" The nearest person, an older man with a grocery bag, stopped and looked at her. His expression was blank. "Do you see me?" she asked desperately. He frowned. "Who are you?" I'm Claire. I own the antique store." He blinked. "There's no store here, ma'am. That building's been empty for years." She turned toward the shop. The sign above it was gone, the windows boarded up, and yet in one cracked pane of glass, she saw her reflection smiling back. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out. The screen flickered, distorted, but there was a new message from the same number. "Unknown. You can't save both." "What?" she whispered. "Unknown. Break the mirror, you die. Leave it whole, she lives instead of you." Claire dropped the phone. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She stared back into the boarded-up shop, at that faint reflection smiling faintly in the single unbroken window pane. Her own voice whispered inside her head, "You forgot me once. Don't do it again." She went back inside. The mirror was waiting, humming softly, like it had a pulse. Her reflection stared back with pleading eyes. "Don't," she whispered. "You'll trap yourself again." Claire picked up a hammer from the counter, her hands shaking. "I'm ending this." The reflection's face twisted in terror. "Please, think, what if you're the one inside?" She froze. The reflection smiled through its tears. "How do you know which one you are anymore?" The lights flickered violently, and the air filled with whispering voices, circling her like a storm. Stay, run, remember, forget. The hum turned into a low, resonant growl. Claire raised the hammer, and in the reflection, the other her did the same. They swung at the same time. The sound was deafening, glass shattering, a scream from nowhere and everywhere. Then silence. When the dust settled, the mirror lay in pieces on the floor. Each shard reflected something different. A fire, a child, a woman in white, a face that wasn't hers. And in the largest shard, Claire saw herself kneeling. Only now, she was inside the glass again. Her reflection, the other her, was standing in the real shop, staring down at the fragments. She whispered, "Thank you for letting me out." Then she swept the shards into a box, locked the door, and left. The town of Dalton never reopened McAllister and Sons. Months later, a man renovating the building found the mirror pieces packed carefully in the attic. He sold them to an antique dealer in Savannah, and every time it rained, one of those shards whispered softly, like breath against glass, "You forgot me once. Don't do it again."
The next time the mirror changed hands, it was summer. Savannah's heat was thick and heavy, the kind of air that clings to your skin like memory. It sat in the back of Ashwood Relics and Curiosities, a dim, narrow shop run by a man named Eli Crow, a collector of things that remembered. He'd bought the broken shards cheap from a renovation crew in Dalton, telling himself he'd restore them, sell them to some wealthy tourist who liked strange stories. He didn't know that some stories weren't for telling, and some memories refused to stay buried. It started small. Every morning, Eli found the shards arranged differently. He'd left them boxed in the back room, wrapped in cloth, but each day a piece or two would appear unwrapped, glinting in the light from the window like they'd been touched by unseen hands. One night, as the rain drummed against the roof, he heard something, a faint, rhythmic tapping, coming from the mirror box. Eli froze. The sound was unmistakable, knuckles on glass. He whispered, "Not tonight." But the tapping continued. He grabbed a flashlight, knelt by the box, and slowly peeled back the cloth. Inside, the shards gleamed faintly, and for a split second, his own reflection looked back at him. Only it wasn't his reflection. The woman in the glass was pale, her lips slightly parted, her eyes wide and black. She pressed her hand against the inside of the shard, leaving a faint smear of blood. Then her lips moved. "Claire." Eli stumbled backward, knocking the light over. The beam rolled across the floor, cutting through the shadows. The shard glowed faintly, and another voice, faint, distant, whispered from a different piece of glass, "Don't say her name." The air in the shop changed, colder, thicker. The shelves creaked. The scent of smoke filled the room. Eli looked around, panic rising. "Who's there?" The voice answered, closer now, a whisper that came from everywhere. "She's still inside." He turned toward the shards. They began to hum softly, the same low vibration Claire had heard before.
Shapes flickered across their surfaces, images of fire, of a little girl screaming, of a man dragging something heavy across the floor. And then he saw her, a woman standing behind the shards in the reflection, hands clasped, hair hanging over her face, her dress burned around the edges. "Who are you?" he whispered. She lifted her head slowly, and when she spoke, her voice wasn't hers alone. It was a chorus, layers of voices overlapping. Ashwood remembers. The lights blew out. When he came to, dawn was breaking. The shop was silent again, but the shards were gone. Every last one. In their place, lying neatly on the counter, was an old photograph, sepia-toned, edges burned. On the back, written in elegant handwriting, were 4 words: "The Ashwood line endures." Over the next few days, Eli began to dig. He went through old property records, local archives, anything he could find tied to Ashwood. That's when he found it. A record from 1883, same year as the Dalton fire. Property of Evelyn McAllister. Residence, Ashwood Plantation. McAllister. The same name carved faintly into the back of the mirror. Evelyn McAllister had been the mistress of the Ashwood estate. She lived alone after her husband's death, raising a single daughter, Clara. According to the record, Evelyn had gone mad after her daughter drowned in the lake behind the house. She stopped leaving her bedroom. Neighbors said she spent her days talking to her reflection, claiming her child spoke to her from the glass. Then one night, the house burned. Only one thing was found intact in the ashes: the mirror. Eli leaned back in his chair, staring at the file. "McAllister," he murmured. "The same bloodline. Claire wasn't just some woman who'd bought the mirror by chance. She was a descendant of Evelyn McAllister. The curse hadn't chosen her. It had returned to her. And the reflection that took her place wasn't some random ghost. It was Evelyn herself, the woman who'd trapped her own soul inside the mirror more than a century ago." That night, the rain came back, hard and relentless. Eli tried to stay awake, tried to drown out the whispers with old music, but around 3 a.m., the power flickered and the hum began again. He turned slowly toward the shop window. The mirror shards were there, reassembled, standing upright, perfectly fused, the Ashwood frame glowing faintly in the dark, and in its surface, Claire, her face pale, her eyes desperate. She mouthed the words, "Help me." Eli stepped closer. "Claire?" Her reflection shook violently. The surface of the mirror rippled like water. Another figure appeared behind her, the older woman with burned skin and hollow eyes. Evelyn. She placed a hand on Claire's shoulder and smiled. Eli froze. "What do you want?" The old woman's voice was a hiss. "To come home." The lights burst. The mirror exploded outward, not into shards this time, but into smoke and shadow pouring into the room like a living thing. When morning came, Ashwood Relics was empty. The front door stood open. The floor was covered in water, and on the counter, written in ash, were the words, "She's out." When the storm cleared, the people of Savannah noticed something odd. For 3 days, every mirror in town fogged over at exactly midnight. No matter how clean or new, whether in homes, stores, or parks, they missed it up, and when wiped, left behind the faint outline of a hand. And on the 4th night, a few said they saw a woman behind the glass. At the edge of the city, in a newly reopened antique store called McAllister Curios, a woman stood behind the counter. Her name tag read Claire. She smiled warmly when customers entered, spoke softly, always polite. Her shop smelled faintly of cedar and smoke, but no one ever saw her lock up, and no one noticed that the mirrors she sold always came with hairline cracks shaped like veins. In the back room of the shop, a mirror stood covered in cloth, dust gathered around it, the air colder there than anywhere else. Sometimes, only sometimes, a sound would come from beneath that cloth, a voice, faint, tired, still fighting. "Please, if anyone hears this, I'm still here." It was the real Claire. She'd been inside too long now. Time no longer felt like days or years. It was just endless reflection, echoes of her own life replayed in reverse. Each day she saw herself on the other side, the thing that wore her face, living perfectly. The imposter talked to customers, smiled for photos, laughed when people complimented her eyes. Eyes that weren't hers anymore. Inside the glass world, Claire's breath clouded faintly against the cold. Every reflection around her was alive, each one a shadow of someone who'd once touched the mirror, now trapped behind it. There were dozens, maybe hundreds, silent faces pressed against the inner walls of the mirror world, watching her. When she tried to speak, her voice came out as whispers in the reflections of other people's mirrors, drifting through their homes in the dead of night. That was how Evelyn had reached her, how every McAllister woman had been claimed. The Ashwood line wasn't a family, it was a chain. Each generation forged by reflection, bound by blood and guilt. And now, Claire was next in line. Not dead, not alive, just a ghost of silver and breath. In the real world, Claire, the false one, kept her life perfectly intact. She reopened the shop under the new name, smiled for local papers, and even began to gain attention online for her rare haunted pieces. She was charming, kind, human, but every photograph taken of her showed something strange. A faint silhouette standing behind her, just a little out of focus. A shadow facing the opposite direction. She never explained it. She only smiled. One night, a storm rolled through Savannah again. Thunder cracked across the sky, and the power flickered. Claire, the false one, walked into the back room. The cloth over the mirror shifted slightly in the draft. A faint tapping echoed beneath it. She stopped, smiled softly, and whispered, "I told you to stay quiet." The tapping grew louder. "You'll never be me," the real Claire's voice hissed from inside. The imposter's smile faltered. She touched the edge of the frame. "You were never very good at letting go." Lightning flashed. For a heartbeat, both women appeared in the same place, one in the room, one in the mirror. two identical faces separated by a sheet of glass, both whispering the same words at once. Who's really the reflection now? The light snapped out. When dawn came, the shop was empty again. The door stood open, the bell still swaying faintly. Police found the store undisturbed. No signs of struggle, no body, no blood. Only one thing stood in the center of the room, the mirror, perfectly whole again. Weeks later, McAllister Curios reopened under new ownership. A young woman named Erin Locke bought it, saying she'd always dreamed of running an antique store. She found the mirror in the back room and decided to keep it. "It's beautiful," she told her husband. "It's like it's watching you." That night, as rain began to fall, she glanced into the mirror while closing up. For a second, she saw her reflection smile back, but her mouth hadn't moved. Then, faintly, from somewhere inside the glass, a voice whispered, "Welcome home, Erin." And the rain outside grew heavier, each drop striking the window like knuckles on glass. Grimora.